Picture the store shelves stripped bare. The trucks have stopped, and this time they are not starting again. The people who filled their carts with powder and cans are already running low, already afraid. And somewhere down the road an old man sits warm and fed, eating from a store of food he made with his own hands. Food with no label, no expiration date. No factory, no truck, no store anywhere in the making of it. Food his people have trusted their lives to for 1,000 years, through famines and hard winters that swallowed every one who did not know what he knew. I have lived that winter. I have watched the roads close and the cold come down like it meant to erase us. And I have eaten well while better stocked men went hungry because I carried what my grandmother carried and her grandmother before her. Tonight, I am going to give you 15 of those foods, 15 Native American survival foods, older than this country, that will keep you and the ones you love alive when everything on the shelf is gone. Before we begin, hear what is coming. Number 7 is a route you have walked over 10,000 times, never once knowing it kept whole nations alive. Number 3 is a food you believe you already know how to make, and one small mistake turns it into a slow poison. And number 1 is not a recipe at all. It is the reason my people were still breathing when the snow finally broke. Stay with me to the end, because the closer we count toward number 1, the more your life may one day depend on it. If no one ever taught you these, that was no accident. Subscribe and stay with me, and by the end you will understand exactly who profited from you forgetting. My name is Samuel Bearhart. I am Cree. My people fed themselves off this land through winters that would kill a modern man in a week, long before there was ever a store to depend on. Every one of these 15 foods cost a few dollars or nothing at all, needs no power and no cold and no chemical, and outlasts the hardest winter you will ever see. Not one of them can be taken from you by an empty shelf. Let us count them down from the last to the first. Number 15. Number 15, pine needle tea. When the snow lies deep for months and there is not a fresh green thing to be found anywhere, a man's body begins to fail him in a quiet way, his teeth loosening, his wounds refusing to close. My people knew the cure long before any doctor gave it a name. You gather a handful of green needles from the pine, and you steep them in hot water, never boiling them hard, and you drink. A single cup holds more of the life-giving strength your body starves for in winter than any orange you could buy at a store. But know your tree, because a few evergreens are poison, and the old ones taught carefully which to take and which to leave. That knowledge alone has saved more lives than any pill. But a warm drink cannot fill an empty belly, and what comes next can. Number 14, the cattail. Out in the wet ground at the edge of every marsh and pond stands a plant that most people walk right past, and it may be the closest thing to a grocery store the wild ever made. In the cold months you dig its roots, pound them in water, and settle out a fine white starch you can dry into flour and keep. In the spring the young shoots eat like a crisp green vegetable, and the golden pollen becomes a flower of its own. A family that knew the cattail never truly went hungry near water. That root keeps you alive, but it cannot give you the strength this next one holds. Number 13, sunflower seeds. Long before it was a snack in a bag, my people grew the sunflower on purpose, the fourth sister standing beside the corn and the beans and the squash. The seeds were ground into a rich meal, pressed for their oil, and worked into other foods for strength. Dense with fat and with protein, they stored through the winter by the bagful and gave a working body the deep fuel it needed to labor and to hunt through the cold. There is more strength packed into a handful of those small gray seeds than in near anything else that grows. Those seeds feed you in summer, yet the next food fed whole nations straight through the killing winters. Number 12, acorns. Here is a food lying by the ton beneath the oaks every autumn that most people believe is worthless, or worse, poison. And eaten raw, they are right. The bitterness in them will make you sick. But my people knew the secret. You crack them and grind them, and you leach that bitterness out with water, running it through again and again until the meal turns sweet, and what is left is a flour that's stored all winter and baked into bread. A single great oak could drop enough to feed a family for a whole season, and the old ones stored acorns by the basketful. The oak fed whole peoples, once the secret was known. But get that one wrong and it turns on you, while this next food only heals. Number 11. Dried squash. A squash left whole will rot before the winter is half over. But my people did not leave it whole. They cut it into long thin strips and rings and dried it on racks in the sun and the wind until it was light and leathery and would keep for many months. Come the deep cold, a handful dropped into the pot swelled back to life, sweet and filling. Dried on its own it is good, but with the two that come next it becomes a feast. Number 10. The Three Sisters. Corn, beans, and squash grown together in one mound, each one helping the others live. The corn gave the beans a pole to climb, the beans fed the soil, and the squash spread wide to hold the moisture and choke out the weeds. Together they made a balanced, complete food, and dried together they filled the storage pits and the woven baskets that carried a whole village from the last harvest clear through to the first green of spring. Grown together they fed a village, yet one of them alone became something far greater. Number 9. Dried corn and hominy. The ears were braided and hung to dry, hard as stone, and stored that way they lasted for years. But my people did the one thing that made the corn truly come alive. They soaked it in water and wood ash, and that ash swelled the hard kernels into soft, chewy hominy and unlocked nourishment the raw grain had kept hidden. A pot of hominy and dried meat is a meal that has carried families through the year, longest winters this land can give. That grew in the gardens, but the next one grew wild on the water, where no man could plant it. If these foods are already changing the way you look at that shelf in your kitchen, do 2 things for me. Subscribe, because there is no other place left teaching this. And tell me down in the comments, how many of these 15 had you ever even heard of before today? I am reading every one. Number 8. Wild rice, that the Ojibwe call manuman, the good berry. It grows wild in the shallow lakes and rivers of the north, and it cannot be planted or owned, only gathered, a canoe gliding, through the tall grass while the ripe grain is knocked gently down into the hull. Parched over a low fire, it dries hard and keeps for years, and a small handful swells into a filling, nourishing meal that sits in the belly like it means to stay. One good harvest could feed a family through the whole of a northern winter. The water gave you that, and now the open plains give up their oldest secret. Number 7. The prairie turnip, that my people call timpsala. This is the one I promised you at the start, the food hiding in plain sight. Out on the open plains grows a humble wild root that men have walked over 10,000 times without a second glance, and it fed whole nations. You dig it in the early summer, and here is the old wisdom: you braid the roots together by their long tails into great ropes and hang them to dry. Dried, they keep for years, and ground into flour they thicken a stew or bake into a bread that carried the plains people through every hard season there was. That root filled the belly, but it could not give what the sweetness of these next ones did. Number 6. Dried berry cakes. When the chokecherries and the June berries and the buffalo berries came ripe, my people did not simply eat their fill and let the rest spoil. The women pounded the berries and pressed them into flat cakes and dried them hard in the sun, and one pouch of those cakes held a whole summer's fruit. Through the winter they were the sweetness and the quiet healing power that a diet of meat and fat alone could never give. Dried and stored they last for years, but cooked, down soft, they become something better still. Number 5. Wojapi. Take those same chokecherries and simmer them low and long, and with no sugar at all they cook down into a thick, dark, rich sauce, thickened the old way with a little of that prairie turnip flour. Wojapi was the burst of life across a plain meal, poured over meat or bread, and dried into leather it kept through the lean months. To this very day it is a sacred food at my people's tables, set down at the gatherings that matter the most. The berries kept your blood strong, yet without this next one, none of it would keep you alive. Number 4. Rendered tallow and bone marrow. Hear me closely, because this is the one the modern world taught you to fear, and that fear may one day cost you your life. Fat is not the enemy. Fat is the food. The marrow inside the bones is the richest thing a hungry body can take in, and the fat rendered slowly off the animal, cooked clean and poured off, hardens into tallow that keeps for years with no cold and no chemical to save it. Render it right, low and slow, until not one bubble of water rises from it any longer, and it will wait for you a long, long time. Without fat, a man living on lean meat alone will starve with a full belly, his body burning itself up just trying to make do. But fat alone is not a meal, and this next food is the one it was made to carry. Now maybe you are the kind who has already put some food by, a garage stacked with buckets and cans, and you believe you are covered. Then you above all need to hear these last 3, because they are the difference between food that saves you and food that quietly betrays you. Subscribe if you have not. Press that like so this reaches the next family who will need it. Tell me in the comments exactly what you are storing right now. Name it. I want to know what they sold you. And send this to one person you love who would not last a single month without a store. Number 3. Dried meat, what most of you call jerky, and this is the food I warned you about at the very start. Nearly everyone believes they already know how to make it, and nearly everyone makes the one mistake that can kill them. You take lean meat, cut it thin, and dry it low and slow, and here is the whole of it. You are not finished when the meat is chewy. You are finished when it is brittle, when a piece of it snaps clean like a dry branch. Pull it too soon, while it still bends, and there is water trapped down inside it that you cannot see and cannot taste. Seal that away, and it breeds rot from the inside out, looking perfect right up until the day it is all you have left, and it turns to poison in your hand. Dry it until it breaks, never until it bends. This plain, honest food lies underneath the 2 greatest survival foods left on this list, the beginning of them both. Torn and chewed on the trail, it kept my people moving, but bound together, it became something sacred. Number 2, Wasna. This is a sacred food of the Lakota, and it is close kin to the one still to come. You take that dried meat, pound it near to a powder, chop in the dried choke cherries, and bind it all together with rich marrow fat, then press it into small cakes. It needs no cooking and no cold to keep it. It is light to carry and dense with everything a body needs, and it was eaten on the hunt, on the move, and in ceremony, a food handled with real reverence, blessed and carried into places a common meal never went. Wasna will carry you for days. But there is one food that carried my people not for days, but for years, one that outlasts everything else on this whole list combined. This is the one I have made you wait for. Number 1, pemmican. The word itself is ours, from the Cree, pemmican. This is the crown of everything I have shown you tonight, the finest survival food that human hands have ever made. You take lean meat and dry it until it shatters, and you grind it to dust. You render the fat clean until every last drop of water is cooked out of it. Then you seal that dry meat inside that clean fat, and you have made a food with nothing left in it for rot to touch. No water, no air, nothing for decay to feed on. Made right. Pemmican has been drawn out of the frozen ground after 50 years and eaten, and it was still good. 50 years, with no power, no can, and no chemical. It fed my ancestors through winters that killed lesser men. It powered the ones who crossed this whole continent on foot, and when the fur traders came, whole companies rose and fell on who held the pemmican, and it was my people who made it. And the making of it is simple as breathing. 1 part dried meat ground to dust, 1 part fat rendered clean, and if you have them, a handful of dried berries worked all the way through. That is the whole of it. 3 things, and a food that laughs at time. It is not a backup you fall to. It is the foundation everything else stands upon, and it is the reason my people were still breathing when the snow finally broke. So there they are, 15 foods older than this country, and every single one of them proof of the same truth. They did not stop teaching you to feed yourself because it stopped working. They stopped because there is no profit in a man who already knows. A can expires, a bucket runs empty. But knowledge like this, you learn it once, and you carry it the rest of your life, and no truck that stops and no shelf that empties can ever take it back out of your hands.